Well, good afternoon, good evening, um, good day to all of you. As promised, we are here today for another edition of the Mental Health and Wellness. Um, Today, we want to welcome all of you to SKTV. Um, we ask you to please share the show, invite other people. Um, let's share the word out there. We are on. We are ready to move. Um, Today, sound, looks very promising as to what we have to discuss. Um, like we said to you on Thursday yesterday, we do have a surprise guest. Our surprise guest will be joining us momentarily um, to talk about some things as well. So, I want to use this opportunity to welcome all of you to SKTV. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this Friday, February 25th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:02 is what? On my end here is what? 4:02. In the Midwest is 5:02. In Liberia, it should be 11:02. In Liberia, it should be 11:02. If I'm not mistaken. Let's share the show today. As you can see on your screen, our topic for today is autonomy, shame versus doubt. Today we are going to learn new things. I'm very excited. I'm thrilled. Um, I look forward to what we will learn together today and the things that we'll talk about. Let's share the show, please. Share the show, invite other people and share the show. Don't be mean. Um, Feel free to comment. We might recognize one or two people while we at it. But let's share the show. Most importantly, please. Let's share the show. Let's share the information. Let's pass it on to others. You will see me doing millions of things as well. Some things are working in the back. Some people are helping us in the back, especially Telco. She's helping us in the back. So let's share the show to this non-political mental health and wellness. A lot to learn about you, about me, about our children, about other children, and so forth. So today we have a lot to talk about. A lot of good information, free information, as I've always said. Let me do something here really, really quick. Free information, as I've always said. Um, but let's share the show and let's invite others. You know, quickly, there's something weird that's been going on with the whole Facebook thing. I've gotten lots of complaints. A lot of people have said to me, whenever we share the show, they can't open the link. If you cannot open the link for any reason, do me a favor, please. Try your best. Go on the SKTV page, and you should be able to follow us effectively immediately. Let's share the show. Let's invite others. Let's have a conversation. In a few minutes here, we'll be playing some music. I'd like to lay the ground rules down really quick, as we did. The ground rules to keep us moving, as we did last week. We'll do it this week too. Let me lay the ground rules down. Please, no insults. Please and please. Yes, it's okay to disagree with us. It's okay to disagree with someone else watching or viewing, but no insult, please. Please refrain from posting links here if you're not authorized to do so. If not so, your link will be deleted. You could be blocked. Disclaimer. We'd like to make the disclaimer from the get-go before we get started. Disclaimer. Let's make the disclaimer from the get-go. This is not a therapeutic session. We're not here to diagnose anyone. This is not meant for treatment purposes. It's meant for teaching, educational, information purposes. not necessarily clinical. So, but we encourage you to come with your questions and your concerns. We'll talk about a lot of different things here. We have a lot of different conversations, and we believe in the next few minutes, we will start playing the music and start sharing the show. If there's any other thing I forgot about, a disclaimer, at some point, we'll talk about it. But please refrain from posting political stuff. So there's no politics. It doesn't matter which camp you support, who you support. Please, no politics. We're begging all of you, no politics, please. Let us not do any politics here. Let us not put anything that has to do with politics here. Please don't write anything that has to do with politics. It will be deleted. So let's stay with the conversation, with the information. And I think we can do that. I think we can move and we can do better. So thank you. We will play one music or two, and then we'll get started with the conversation. Let's see here. Since the person who came on the show, the person who joined on the show today, she bear with me. I know she got a new friend now or what's going on, but we're fit here today on the show. Don't help us with it. So, but let's let me remind her that we are friends, and she can't do a body like that.
Love.
It's
Find a friend like me. Find a friend like me. If you not want betrayal, find a friend like me. Find a friend like me. Find a friend like me. If you not want betrayal, find a friend like me.
Bombe oh, find a friend like me. Bombe Jene oh, find a friend like me. Find a friend like me. Find a friend like me.
Hey, see bestie. Your bestie not sweet like my bestie. Your bestie la bestie. Find a friend like me.
I say, see bestie wanting to wealthy. Find a friend like me. I hear them say they want me go. I say
Some of them say they want me go.
I say
Some friends you la oh. Some friends you la oh. Some friends you la oh. Friends you la oh. Hey, see bestie. Your bestie not sweet like my bestie. Your bestie la bestie. Find a friend like me.
I say, see bestie wanting to wealthy. Find a friend like me. They won't step on my blessing, but God get it breaking, yeah. They won't call it my blessing, but God get it breaking, yeah.
Friendship, see friendship. Can't see Papa T friendship. I don't want no bad for friendship. Wangolo, wango for bestie, wango for daddy,
I hear them say they want me go. I say I hear them say they want me go. I say
Some friends you la oh. Some friends you la oh. Some friends you la oh. Friends you la oh. Hey, see bestie. Your bestie not friend but my bestie. The bestie la bestie, find a friend like me.
I say, see bestie want ten to wefty want him a lonely. Find a friend like me.
DJ Young T.
You got money like Johnny. You funny.
Beats.
You don't even know my story. You don't even know your story, oh yeah. Oh yeah, you know on the beat, I be a loca. So moral. You post a new car on Facebook, but that's so la la. You working better. Bluffing and acting jealous, say you photo. My advice for you in my way, I got to confess. Confession. You gotta confess. You must stop the impression. Enjoyment, got your blessing. Enjoyment, no more stressing. Enjoyment, got your blessing. Enjoyment, no more stressing.
It's never gonna be another man trash, just another man treasure. Another man fool was another man poison. Got your code, according to your measurement. Got your code, according to your measurement. The player ain't carrish, and they play for it. Just because of impression. Impression, fake impression. Impression, yeah. You don't even know my story. Or you want to share my glory, oh yeah. Everywhere you my way, oh way, oh Zangare. Everywhere you my way, oh Zangare. Every touch you my way, oh way, oh.
Enjoyment, got your blessing. Enjoyment, no more stressing. Enjoyment, got your blessing. Enjoyment, no more stressing. Yeah. The hammer you driving, nothing into keke. This a ballin'. The thing that we talking, they must stay right here. Stop spoiling my meaning. I'm living my life, oh. See, I'm living my life, oh. If you pay you, hey, oh, hey, oh. If you owe you, hey, oh, hey, oh. If you hate you, hey, oh, hey, oh. If you pay you, hey, oh. You don't even know my story. Enjoyment.
Oh my God, you're cute.
Enjoyment, no more stressing. Enjoyment, got your blessing. Enjoyment.
All right. Enjoyment, that your blessing. Well, folks, let's get started here today. Same as last week, we started off with the definition of mental health and wellness. I know many of you are wondering who that kid on your screen and what is he actually doing. Many of you might be wondering that. You will be surprised to know that the kid on there is actually, in America, we call them, they can call them terrible 2, terrible 3, or whatever number they call them. But terrible is always associated with them. We'll come back to talk about why the kid is in the freezer. Why is he there? What is he doing there? Who put him there? Today, we, as always, will focus on what is mental health. Last week, we did tell you, and we'll go over it really quick so that we can move into the conversation, that according to the World Health Organization, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which individual realizes their own abilities, can cope with normal stress of life, can work productively and fruitful, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. That is simply, or the simplest form to define mental health and what it means. And you will see at the very end, it talks about his or her community, society, country, or however you want to term it. I'd like you to understand that mental health affects whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, whether you're old, whether you're big, whether you're small, whether you're short, whether you have money, you don't have money. It does not care. So that's something that we must understand. Mental health affects all of us. It can affect us. It has the ability to do that. It does. Whether you like it or not, whether you know about it or not, it doesn't make a difference. It has the ability to do that. So the issue of mental health is a big thing. We see it all over the place. We see it in different countries, around different race, different age groups, different genders. So the issue of mental health is not a witchcraft thing. Like we say in Liberia, it's not a witchcraft thing. It's not a society thing. There ain't no society thing. The real issue, the real situation, the factual issues that we're faced with. But like we said last week, it starts from somewhere. It doesn't just start like that. Last week, we talked to you about trust versus mistrust. Last week, we talked to you about it. We informed you about what looks like trust, what looks like mistrust, what can be trust, and what can be mistrust. We had a huge conversation with you last week about it, and how it works, and how we are affected by it. That was our focus last week. We talked to you about how children are born, what are some of the implications, what are some of the things that happen, what goes on, and how they grow, how they develop, and what's really happening to them. Last week we talked about it. And we learned a lot of different things. So this week, we want to move a little further to continue with where we stopped. In the same token, last week, I think many of you remember this guy. Like I said, you will be seeing him maybe for the next 8 weeks while we have this conversation. You will be seeing him maybe almost every Friday. We told you who Eric Erickson was. We told you, or is, was, however you want to term it. We told you about his contribution to the whole issue of mental health and wellness, psychology, the well-being of people. We talked about it. We did. We told you that Eric Erickson was the one who came about the 8 stages. Some call it human growth and development. You know, different names for it, but he came up with it. We also told you that Eric Erickson spoke about identity crisis. This, as you see on your screen, is the 8 stages of psychosocial development. Again, somebody might call it human growth and development because it concerns human being. As you can see on the screen, you see the picture. You see how the child started, Now the child started to walk and so forth. So we see these different aspects, we see these different developmental stages of our lives. And let me just be clear to all of us, whether you live in Liberia or you live in other countries that are poor or other countries that are developed, rich, and so forth, no one born of a woman and man can escape these stages. No, that's not truth. You go through these stages. Either you skip one and you go to the other one, but then you revert to the one that you skip, or so forth. So basically, our lives as human beings, our well-being, how we live, they're all surrounded by this. We say they're characterized by these stages of growth. And as time goes by, you grow in these different stages. You grow in these different stages. You move from one to another. You move from one to another. This is why you can sit and look at your picture when you were a baby. You can also look at your picture when you were 2 or 3 years old. You can look at your picture when you were 10 years old. Some of you have photo of it. Some of you can also look at your pictures when you were 20 years old. Today, maybe you were 40, you're 45. You can go back and look at your 20 years old picture. And you see that either some things have changed or some things that remain constant in your life, whether in the way you think, the way you process information. But bottom line is we don't skip. We as human beings do not skip these stages of growth. But let's move on. Let's move on just a little more. So many of us have been asking, so then the next stage, which is autonomy, shame, and doubt, or autonomy, shame versus doubt. So the question that many of us have been asking is, what does it really mean? Because a child at the age 2 to 3, or in America, we say maybe 18 months to 24 months, or whatever months you want to call it, how does that child deal with all of this at that stage? How 3-year-old can, most people say, well, how 3-year-old can have shame? How can they start having doubts as 3 years old? So the picture I'm trying to print to you first is, as you see yourself growing up, you think in your mind that maybe the issue of shame and so forth, it just started. No, it didn't just start. It didn't just start. You didn't just start becoming shy. So you will see that as something that has been happening or that has been there, but you probably did not figure it out, or people did not figure it out at a certain age. And it's normal. It is normal. I don't want you to be afraid or think that, oh, something came over you. No, nothing came over you. It is normal. People might not notice it at that age. Some parents don't pay attention at that age, but these are part of the developments that we go through as human beings that are there normally. So then the question now becomes, so then what is this word autonomy? What does it mean? What does that big word autonomy means? Because we have to understand, remember last week we told you that it is important for you to understand the meaning of words before you can attach them to something. Because if you don't understand the meaning of words and you attach them to something, then it becomes as though you don't know what you are saying. So what does the word autonomy mean? What does it really, really mean? So in simple sense, or in a simple way, let's put it the simplest way, it's actually a word that means the stage where you reach to be able to start making decisions. Let me put it that way. You start to make decisions, whether the decisions are good or they're bad. So imagine at age 2.5 going to 3, or 2 going to 3, the child or the children, or we as human beings, will start to make decisions based on what we see, based on what's around us. So it's a very critical stage. And sometimes people term that stage as terrible 3. It's where the children are making decisions now. They want to become independent. they start to develop these different emotions and these different things around them. They want to see what will happen, or they want to take a knife and put it a light. They see water, they want to run to it. They see the pool open, they want to run that. They have no sense of direction, but if they reach at that stage where their brain is telling them, try this or you can do this. So they start to want to get independent. So you will see that if you used to feed the child will say no. They want to put their hand in the food and take the food. You will see that if there are certain things you used to do for them, they want to do it by themselves. They start to develop that sense of independence. They want to try things. They get to that stage in their life where they want to try things, they want to explore things, however you want to term it. But in this stage also, it's important for you to understand that there are a lot of things happening. They're growing, they're learning things such as, and this part is important for you to understand this part very clearly, because it will help you maybe pay attention to either your children that you have now, or other children that you are caring for, or children that you plan to have. In the stage, some children, maybe they have been potty trained. Potty trained means they started now to not be using diaper. But in the stage, it's not a bad thing originally, because this stage is from 18 months to about 24 months, which is mostly about 3 years old. About this time now, you want to start training their muscles for them to go to the bathroom. So you start teaching them how to use the bathroom. You carry them to the bathroom. For the men, what I would encourage for you as a man, carry them and stay and pee and let the child pee. Let them learn that thing, because they will want to try it. So you see the brain start to go to the place you direct the brain. The brain start to react to things that you give the brain. The brain starts to do things that you teach it to do. So it becomes a natural thing for the brain. The brain starts to act very reactively. It becomes very active. So they are looking forward to teaching and training direction. So again, it's not a bad thing for you to go to the bathroom, and you as a man, maybe you decide to pee and you teach your child, your son, say, hey, you can pee in that. Come on, and start teaching it. Some of you will notice, whether you're a woman or you're a man, they start to ask you when you go to the bathroom to take shower with them. If you used to take shower with them, or if you used to take bath with them, they'll start asking you about your body parts. What is that? What is this? They're very curious in this stage. They're very, very curious. Very curious. They pay attention to a lot of different things. They pay attention to details. Not necessarily that they will get it, but they pay attention to what you do, your actions and your inactions. So they also, in this stage, some of you may realize or might not even think about it at this time, things that are not done leave it more like it leaves a vacuum. It more like it leaves a vacuum. Things that are not done. So they try to fill that vacuum for things that they don't understand because of that curiosity. They start to explore the world. They start to see things. They start to get to know people. So yes. So it is very, very important for you to understand the difference of these things, because when you don't, so in the same time too, shame comes in also, and doubt comes in also when you don't give them chance to do things. So they will cry, they will throw a fit. Throw a fit means, or they'll throw a tantrum. It means pretty much they'll start having attitude. Whether that boy or that girl. At this point, because they want to explore, they want to do things by themselves, but you're not allowing them to do it. The things that they want to do, the things that they want to try, you're not allowing them to do it. Now, as a parent, it's okay for you to guide them and teach them. It is your responsibility. You must do it. It is your responsibility. That's why you need to be there at this stage of their life as well. And I encourage both parents as much as possible, to play a role, to do your part. It has nothing to do with relationship with the next person. It just has to do with responsibility, connection, and so forth. So at this stage, they're doing a lot of different things. They're very curious. Some of them you might think, say, They chose to break your glass. They didn't choose to break it. They probably don't know what's going on, but they're very curious. Oh, what that glass I'm seeing over there? I've been seeing my mom putting that glass over there for so long, or my pa, every day I can see it. Let me go see where it is. They take it to break it. Now, so you need to start teaching them, because shame, doubt, and other things, if they don't explore those part of them, then it become more of, my pa or my ma does not want me to learn. They don't want me in the head. They're thinking differently. So now we move forward to how their brains work, because the children brain work differently. The children brains don't work like our own. They don't. Their brain work differently. All of us brain used to work like that at some point. At some point, all of us, our brain were working in a different way. So from about 5 years to birth, a lot of things can happen to the children. They start to learn. They start to coordinate other parts of the body, and some of these things, they're done naturally. It's a natural thing. Also, some of you will have to start noticing your children at this time. You can tell some things about them. I'm not saying pass around and go try to diagnose people, because there's a lot more to it. But there are some things that are unusual you can start noticing. Let's take, for example, at this stage, if the child is not doing the normal things that other children supposed to be doing at this time, then it should be a concern to you. It should be a concern to you. If they're slower, they're not reactive, they're not acting as other children, at this stage, they should be making progress in their life, their brain coordination. So if they're not doing it, so then what we can do, let's say if you go to your doctor and your doctor notices that the child is not acting a certain way, then they start to refer you to specialists, to other people. So let's say you came to me, one of the things I will start looking for now is whether their brain is functioning as the next child. Because if their brain is not functioning as the next child, then most likely that child, and again, I will not go into the diagnostic part because it has a lot more to do, but then we start thinking about autism. We start thinking about autism. We start thinking about other different things. Now, in Africa or in Liberia, where I'm from, most of the times they will say, maybe they wish that child, or the child still on the ground. Or, so for some children, even the walking, the crawling, it takes longer. But at least, at minimum, that child should be, in effect, doing some things. So their brains start to work very, very differently and in a special way from all of us. They don't work as adults. So you will have to be there to guide them in the decisions. You will have to be there to help them in the things that they do. You will have to be there to make sure that the things that they are doing is safe. The things that they get involved with, they are safe things. They're not just anything. They can't just wake up and just do anything. No. You can't just allow them to do anything, especially if they're not healthy. Those things are not safe for them. They cannot just be doing everything. So in as much that the children will want their independence at that time, you will also need to make sure that you will guide them. Because at that time, if you let them do anything, they will do anything and everything. But they don't know the consequences. They don't know the effect of these things that they're doing, whether they're good or they're bad. They wouldn't know. So let's move forward really quick. And so in the next slide, you see we start to talk about how the brain connects. We'll start to talk about how the brain connects. But before we get into the part of the brain connection, because this will lead us into the next part, I'd like to bring up our guest so that not only that she can form part of this conversation, but she can tell you about maybe some of the work she's done as to how the brain connect. Because mind you, when all of these children are growing, when all of us were growing, maybe we didn't have the opportunity, we are learning. One of the most important things that you can do for your child or your children at this age is keep the learning process going. They must keep learning. They must keep learning. So learning is very, very important, whether they're reading, whether they're teaching them, which is a big, big factor. Reading, teaching, and all these different things, they're critically important. So let's bring on our next guest, and we'll talk about how the brain connects once our guest is seated and she makes her points and educate us too as well on some things. Let's bring our next guest. I'm not going to call her name because she's not happy with me, but let's bring our next guest. Hello.
Hello. So, yeah, you just brought me on your show and put me on blast, just like that. And going back to that, your Lala friendship song you played in the beginning, right? Um, so, anyway, I'll say hi to your guest. I'll get to you in a little bit. Um, Hello, everyone, and I want to say thank you for being here. I've enjoyed watching some of the segments that my so-called friend does um, on here regularly. I particularly appreciate the segment on the 8 stages of development as your last show, Steve, the segment on trust versus mistrust, and which now you are into the autonomy, um, shame versus doubt. I appreciate the work you do and your passion for educating and helping others understand the issues of mental health. Even though I appreciate your friendship, but I do appreciate this, and I'm honored to be on your show and on this show tonight. And I thank everyone. I see your audience; they're very interactive and engaging on here. So, um, yeah, so I'm happy to be here and be a part of this.
Well, thank you, Mimu. For those of you who do not know, this is Mimu. Mimu is my friend, but
Hmm.
we've been out of touch for I don't know how long. I will confess, I'm very sorry, Mimu, before we get into the conversation um, about the role you play as well and what you've done. I'm very sorry. I stay out of touch. I'm very bad with that too, to be honest. I
But you
stay.
even let me tell the people, you even gave me chance to have a conversation. You just said on the show. I said, oh, but no talking, no. So he didn't think I would bring up our dirty laundry in here. So I said,
Oh, all
okay,
right.
let me kind of address you. But he played his own song in the beginning, and that was a Lala friendship. So I appreciate that. All right, go ahead.
Well, Mimu is here today. I hope she has finally forgiven me. And Mimu, I promise I'll be in touch now. I'll be calling. I'll be texting. I'll go back to before when we used to have this lengthy conversation. We talk about all these different things, all these different good plans and all of the work that you're doing. We're checking with each other. We check on all these professional things and all this good work. But congratulations to you. Sorry, I couldn't make it there. You see, tell on your side. You see,
Yeah, I'm my new friend.
the
Yeah,
city we're discussing. Tell that a new friend.
I'm my new friend. I'm on your friendship.
Tell, you know that. Tell that. Okay.
Then you know what happened? I can me put my glasses on. Do not give me hard time for my glasses. Not because some of us we can see when we need to read. So I beg you to not tonight. Okay?
All right, great.
Okay.
So Mimu is here. Mimu did an awesome job that I found very interesting. Very, very interesting. She did something that and before she get into it, I just want to make sure I bring it up. She did something that's that is interesting, but maybe most of us didn't pay attention to it. And when she told me about it the first time she started to do it, I was like, "What? That's a good thing, oh, And immediately I said I want to be part of it, and I grabbed my own too. So, Mimu, um, tell us about some of the things you did or you've done so far. What's going on?
Mm, okay. Perhaps some of your audience members might already know me. And for those who don't now, we're all friends now, right? So I have new friends on here. I did write a book on actually interactive guide for parents and children on early intervention and prevention of childhood sexual abuse. For those of you who know, this is what it looks like, the book. And it's been out now for some time. It's on Amazon. And yeah, I mean, you can ask me some questions around it, but I wrote this book in order to engage parents to be the guiding force, the central force of the beginning of having this conversation with their children. I believe that education starts at home, and this subject matter most importantly, should start from home, because parents are instrumental and should be instrumental to every learning. That includes boundaries and respect for our bodies, and establishing safety for children. Since childhood sexual abuse predominantly occur in the home, sadly, and among family members, and that's because of the trust we establish in childhood. Children trust adults, they trust their parents, their caregivers, and that trust can be betrayed and broken, shattered, because the fundamental of childhood abuse strips away all of that. So it's important to always ensure that safety for children is established in the home at first. So, I mean, that's the purpose of the book, to help parents and other caregivers start the conversation, which can be very difficult, sensitive, sometimes culturally very hard to talk about. And that's why, as a survivor who personally went through the same abuse, I felt a duty to contribute and help others, especially parents, create safety so that other children do not get abused.
Thank you, Mimo. And as you can see on the screen, you will see that the book is on Amazon. I bought this book. Not only did I read through it already, I also read it to my children, and they asked me a lot of questions. They asked me a lot of questions, and I was a little, to be honest, yes, you're right that the conversation can be difficult to spike or to start to have, even as teaching this maybe at the university level or whatever level. I found it a little difficult to even have this conversation with children. I did. I found it difficult, but it made sense to them. So my question to you now, Mimu, is why did you choose to write on children as opposed to adults and grown-ups?
Um, well, the book itself, even though it's for children to have the autonomy to speak up and to make decisions in terms of not only speaking up and acknowledging that it's wrong, abuse is wrong, but recognizing their body boundaries and telling responsible adults about inappropriate touching. But also, in a way, it doesn't exclude parents or adults, because the book is meant to be interactive, with parents having the conversation. And the first part of the book, even, is from a parent voice to the child, so that we have to establish that safety first in order to have children take any part responsibility. We have to do that. And by doing so, the book also educates parents in terms of how we ought to teach children, and how children are supposed to feel and take initiatives to come to an adult or parent who have created that safe environment. So in a way, it's happening for both parents and children, but specifically engaging with the child. Remember now, learning which have to be in two parts. We can't teach the children without teaching the adults. So we can't say we're going to hold the children accountable and leave the adults out of their responsibility, because at the end, we adults, parents, are responsible for protecting children.
So another question would be: at what age can we start to teach our children about some of these things? At what age?
Okay, that's a great question. As far as teaching them in general, we teach them from the day they're born, right? Trust versus mistrust, as your last segment, is we cater to our children, we meet their needs, we nurture them, we create the foundation for trust. If they're crying, we attend to those needs, whether it's to change the diaper, to feed, to care for. teaching and being attentive, such as nurturing, um, boundaries of, where it's safe to go, where it's not safe to go, if they're crawling or walking. So we're teaching them from the day they're born how to trust, how to love, how to care for. And when they're talking, being able to, we're teaching them how to use the bathroom, how to be, independent. So from the moment they begin to understand right from wrong, right, is the moment we start to teach them about body safety, boundaries. If somebody says stop, means stop. So they recognize the voice. Voice and choice are the two most important things, even for trauma survivors too, right? Because when we are being violated, we lose our voice. And as a matter, don't feel like we have a choice. And that carries on as a lasting effect. So we start to teach early on about voice and choice. Let's speak up. What's wrong. And children have to feel that they're being heard. That's important. And body safety, boundaries, what are my, that I have, that I'm important, right? I'm important, therefore my body is important and my body belongs to me. No one has the right to violate me or touch me inappropriately. So we constantly reinforcing that from the young age, could be 2, sometimes even younger, depending on how the child is developing and maturing. But I mean, on the book, I may have put 2 or from 4, I can't remember now. But as early as 2, I would say that it's important to start teaching in terms of body safety, education, and awareness as early as 2. Once they can understand right from wrong, then we need to be telling them that. I mean, if we can say, don't cross the road, don't touch the hot stove, don't play with the knife, don't put the pin in the plug, we need to be letting them know that boundaries for their bodies too are important, right? No one touches them inappropriate unless it's for safety, hygiene purposes, caring for them when they can't do it for themselves. We know that needs to be done by an adult or caregiver. But as they become independent, they learn how to do things on their own. And we then establish what is safe boundaries and when they can speak up if they're not comfortable with something and what's wrong. If they're wearing panties or bathing suit, those are their boundaries for inappropriate touching. Yeah, and simply being able to tell if somebody does something inappropriate, or they feel uncomfortable. They need to be taught to trust their own instinct too when something feels wrong, and that they can speak up about that.
So one thing I realized about the book when I read it, because I read it more than once. One thing I realized about the book when I first got it from Amazon, and I read it the first time, the very first thing I pick up from the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that other people would pick it up as well. My first instinct was there was so much passion vested in the writing. Why is that? It seemed like we had a lot of connection and passion in this book, in the writing. That the very first thing I noticed and I realized.
Yes. Thank you for saying that, Steve, because writing that book, I almost want to be emotional thinking about it. Writing that book was a healing process for me as a survivor. And I wrote the book not only from my academic experience, but from a personal experience as well. So it's that combination of that research, my personal experience, and that felt like a life's work for me. Everything I've ever worked for through my healing process, how I had to overcome my trauma and still overcoming. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. It just never ends. And writing the book was my heart and soul. Actually, I mean, I'm writing my story now, but when I finished writing the book, I felt like I did it. It's a part of that healing that I went through. And so that much of what the passion that you see comes through from the very beginning.
Yes, I have read lots of different literatures or different books or whatever you might term it. I felt, maybe I never told you this before behind closed doors when we speak,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt so much connection. I felt so much passion and so much investment, such as just the emotional connection to the book. So that I wanted to make sure I ask you in
Mm-hmm.
public, not necessarily be a trick question, but
Right.
let me ask you this other question, and we'll talk more about how people can get this book, and what needs to be done, and how best we can promote this book, and what we need to be. How easy it is for a parent to either go through this book with a child or the children, how easy it is, and how long will it take? Because when I opened the book too, I saw different images. Like you see the page, you see on the very first page there are different images in the book. So how easy is it for them to navigate through this book or to help the children learn this book? And how long should it take, or is it expected to take?
Oh, you asked great questions, Steve. The book is very easy, and as an adult can read it within probably 5 minutes if they want to read the book for context, right? But it's meant to be an easy read for any grade level. And the interesting part about the question about what age should we teach and what age this book is for, I've had parents who've read the book, and surprisingly, whether they were a survivor or not, the book resonated with them, especially if they were survivors, because for the first time, they felt that they should not have been blamed for what happened to them.
Hmm.
So the book speaks to adults as well as children and even teenagers who may have been violated. Because when you read the book, it goes through the process of instilling what love should have been in the beginning, right? As a child, and how special and esteemed we should feel as individuals. So that sense of individuality and self-worth is throughout in the book. And the sense of autonomy and without shame of guilt that they did anything wrong. So it depends on the experience as well as the age, and even for parents who don't know how to have the conversation, who haven't had the means to say, can I start this conversation? And it's done in a safe way so that anyone literally can pick it up and say, okay, this is a starting point. I feel comfortable. I feel this is a way for me to engage without it being this taboo that we can't talk about it. And at the same time, the images for each page sometimes can be pictorial. You may not, you may, as a parent, you might read it, and maybe your child may not be engaging too much in the reading process, but in a pictorial way, you can talk about it and engage for each page. And most importantly, is the diversity in the book or the images, because child sexual abuse occurs across cultures. So it's not limited to one culture per se. And that was the message I wanted to give, so that everybody feels that relatable sense and unity in the cause and issue of eradicating child sexual abuse.
Well, thank you, Mimo. But another point that in this segment, I'm sure it would continue sometimes next week, because
Mhm.
I know for sure the goal is for us to be here for 1 hour. Sometimes they expand and pushes up to 1 hour 30 minutes. But next week we will continue on this session. But let's move a little, because I don't. The goal is, I'm not just trying to say, oh, because Mimo is a friend and I've known Mimo for a while now, so I'm here to promote the book, or I'm here. No, that's not the purpose. Is the purpose for me is, I've read through this book as a male, and I've never experienced any kind of sexual trauma or so forth in my life. Neither have I been a perpetrator to anyone. Did I commit any such crime or anyone? But just reading this book, like you said, gave me a sense of how parents sometimes can even blame themselves, like you said earlier, how parents become resistant, even trying to want to have this conversation. Now, the question to you is, what do you do if you open the first page of this book and it starts to remind you exactly about you, and you close it automatically? What do you say to that parent? That you don't, why did you even buy this book? Why did I even buy it? It brings back that memory. You relive it vividly, like you said. What do you say to that parent or to that child?
Yes, and that is possible, very much possible, because it may be for the first time someone is finally going to address or even process, whatever happened to them during that time. Many of survivors don't ever get to talk about what happened to them. And I just want to go back to your trust versus mistrust last segment.
Mhm.
When that trust is broken, and we, as a result, go through the issues of mistrust, which is the lack of trust. When you don't have trust, we don't have that safe space of people to talk to go to reassure us, right? And from your last segment, what the takeaway from that would be for all of your audiences is that, um, how can we then, as individuals, create safe spaces and places for each other to be vulnerable, to talk about our pain? Because when we're talking about Liberia, for example, um, just focusing on Liberia, not that this is the only Liberian issue. We know this is a worldwide wide issue. But how can we create safe spaces for all of us who've experienced trauma of war, trauma of, disaster, be it, natural disaster, accidental, any form of trauma, child sexual abuse, all of those. We need to create safe spaces for individuals to trust again when that trust is no longer there. And for those who will open the book to try to, read it, but then think, oh my God, this is me. I'm reminded of that. My hope is that the language in which I wrote the book is comforting enough in the beginning to show that I'm compassionate, I'm with them, they're not alone in it. And but also if they can have trusting others to talk to about what they're going through, because that's what we need now. Because child sexual abuse is a relational injury. That trauma is relational injury, which means the injury occurs through relationships. And because of that, healing has to take place interpersonally through relationships. So that's very important, because through a relationship, harm occur. And through another relationship, a healthy relationship, healing occurs.
So thank you, Mimo. Thanks for providing that clarity and that context. So then my my question to you, because and definitely to our listeners and our viewers, if you're just tuning in, you're watching us here on SKTV, we are on the segment here, shame, autonomy, and doubt. My question to you now, before we get to how to get a book and what needs to be done and how you can be contacted and so forth, and then we'll probably open the line to get one or two input. People will call in, or if they can, or so forth. But my question to you now is, how does this book help us overcome maybe shame from a young age, doubt, because some of the reasons, some of the traumatic effect I know of, some of the signs and symptoms from childhood or so forth, shame is associated, is doubt, and so people do all kind of things to feel validated, or to feel, they want to get rid of that nasty feeling or that thought process in them where they were validated. Um, how do we get? How does this book communicate that healing process to us? How does it help us?
Yeah, that definitely goes back to your early question. You open it, then what? Reopen it again, right?
Mhm.
And find that comfort and safe place within the book itself. Because child sexual abuse is full of lies, which is the consequences of abuse. We are blamed for the abuse. Those are the lies that we were told during the trauma of child sexual abuse. We were blamed. We were made to feel and told that we were bad. We were unworthy. We were made to feel shameful. And shame is a pervasive consequences of child sexual abuse, and that we are powerless, right? So those are the lies that victims or survivors live through for a very long time. If others don't step in to intervene and help to reduce that damage that had just occurred, the longer we wait without addressing the pain and the damage, the more extensive the individual suffers. And depending on the severity of the prolonged abuse in some cases, so whether it was the child was abused once is bad enough. Then you have repeated abuse, and then you have long duration for years you go through the abuse. That's very damaging. And some of the stages you're talking about, like trust versus mistrust, autonomy, and so on, and all of those stages can sometimes be disrupted or completely cut off from there, right? Because you're not properly going through your developmental stages, and the individual is stuck with those lies, and shame is like the crown of it all. You have shame and other lies that you go through in terms of doubt and the self-esteem, but always come back to the shame. Shame is a very important one. For us survivors, overcoming that requires a safe place with safe individuals, safe relationships that help restores our sense of self. Because what happens with this type of abuse is that it disconnects us from ourselves, with others, and the world. So how do we get back to finding who we are, right? And a lot of times you hear people say, well, you were abused. It happened a long time ago. Just forget about that thing. Y'all stop talking about it. But the problem is we don't know how to do it on our own. We need somebody to teach us. In relationships, how do we relate again? It has to happen within healthy relationships. So part of how we overcome the shame and all that, yes, we can learn psychoeducational materials. We can go through all of that. But our healing and overcoming all of these consequences that are associated with child sexual abuse has to happen in healthy context of other relationships that brings us back to us connecting first, learning to connect with another person, then learning to connect with ourselves, and then others in the world around us.
Interesting facts. Oh, very, very interesting. Mimo, let's get to the book. So how can we get the book? I'm seeing links here. We have a link from Amazon. Those of you who want to order online. Mimo, how is the book doing? How long the book has been up? And where can we get it? Where are other places we can get it apart from maybe Amazon, which is one of the most popular places? Where else?
Yes, Amazon is a popular place to get the book from. It's also on my website. I did put the link. My website is on here. So if you can get it from Amazon or the website, that's one of the places. Or if I happen to be someplace in person, you can get the book there as well. Currently, I'm working on, what we are trying to do is to have soon working on a project to have the book launch in Liberia digitally and in person as well in Liberia. So we'll let you all know more about that later. But currently, the book is on Amazon for quick purchase. I encourage your audience to do that. And for those of your audience who are on your show on here, they are part of the process for mental health issues that you are educating people on, including this segment. part of education is key. I heard you mention it on your show the other day. Education saved my life. So a lot of the times, my friends will hear me say that school saved my life. And a lot of it doesn't mean that we all need to get masters and PhDs and all that, but in the context of learning and being self-aware and informed to make informed decisions is key. And that form of education, we can't ignore that. For trauma survivors, a lot of what we need, it is psychoeducation in terms of also relationship building and restoration on that and restoring the sense of self. So yeah, that in short, the book can be bought from Amazon. And your audience, what I was trying to say, that they are doing their part too to not only be aware, but also sharing that awareness with others in terms of the work you're doing on here.
Wow. Thank you so much. Again, I want to encourage all of you to purchase the book. Mimo, you see, it been so long now, and I forget. You living where? Asia or where?
I'm right here in Maryland. I'm right here in Maryland. Don't act like you like I hear you look for me.
I just won't get on your nerves.
So the next time you hear, you come. I get problem with you.
Oh God, I got it. You see, I'm making it all small now.
All right, that your audience will big for you next time.
Well, let's put the numbers on here so that if you have any question for Mimu or for myself in this segment, we'll put the number up here. The link on there is from Mimu's personal page. Mimu, how can you be reached on Facebook? Because most people are on Facebook as well. Can you let them know?
So my name is somewhere on here. I think I've typed something. So Mimu McCoy. If you see Mimu McCoy on there, just click on it. You can add me as a friend or follow, whichever one. You can reach me there. And yeah, but just for the topic of how severe and serious the issue of child sexual abuse is, for everyone who may not know the numbers, which is sometimes increasing over time, the US alone investigates 3.2 million child sexual abuse cases every year, okay? Each year. And about 40 million children are abused internationally. Okay? Okay? And 1.5 to 2 million are trafficked either through forced labor or sex slavery. That's important. Now, 1 in 4 girls are sexually abused. Used to be 1 in 5, but now 1 in 4, and 1 in 6 boys are sexually abused. So those numbers are important to know that this is an abuse. This is a crime that is being committed, and these are serious numbers. And think of it intergenerationally, talking about the shame in cultures like Liberia. We don't want to talk about that stuff because intergenerational trauma, the shame is too much to want to be exposed. And the issues haven't been dealt with from one generation to another. And so how do we end that cycle of abuse and criminal activity? A society, a cultural disease that needs to stop. We need to talk about it, but not just talk about it. We need to learn about why it's wrong. Places like Liberia, how long has a law been in place about violation of sexual abuse? Not very long. So I personally agree to the educational side of things that you looked at, because I believe into education is the key first. We have to address it by teaching and then holding people accountable by the law as well.
Holding people accountable. Well, thank you, Mimo. We'll open the lines here. Feel free to place your call to Mimo or myself if you have any question today. Just to our audience, next week we'll continue from where we stopped. We did not have the ability to talk about how the brain works, and we will definitely include some of the things we've talked about today that Mimu has talked about, child sexual abuse as well, um, and how it impacts the brain functions. Um, and we overlook some of these things. Mimu, it's sad in our times and in our generation when I see people gravitating so much to negativity. For maybe you and I who are behind closed, who understand some things, we totally understand as to why they're gravitating that way. Because in normal situations, dealing with normal people in normal circumstances, people would go away from that because it's unhealthy. Rather, people run towards that.
Mhm.
And, you know, very shocking, very
Yeah.
interesting, that people would run to things with things where there's information, there's education, because it makes a difference whether you like it or not. Information is critically important.
Yeah.
When you have information, you are empowered. You
Right.
are empowered. So this
Yeah.
sense of relief or empowerment does not come until you are informed. There are a lot of things that we don't know. But once
Hmm.
you get to know it, then guess what? Then you can choose now to address it or not.
Right.
So you see, but again, like I said, it speaks volume, and not to be judgmental or whatever it is to anybody, but these are just the facts that we are in troubling times. While we're on, a friend of mine's also from Liberia that's following the show send me a page of a 3-year-old child that was raped today, 3 years old. The same thing we're
Mm.
talking about. See how disturbing that is. But we'll have a caller here. Let's get it. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from, please?
Hello.
Yes, hello. What's your name? Where you calling from, please?
Ben, I'm driving, so I hope that I'm audible. Can you hear me very well?
Yes, we can hear you. Mimu, you can hear him, right?
Yes.
Yes, she can hear you too.
Okay. Good. So I want you to please help me and the draw a parallel comparison as to how sexual abuse affects our mental health.
Okay. Well, Mimu, you want Mimu to take a swap at it or both of us?
Both of you.
Okay.
And then a part two to my question will be
Mm-hmm.
in a country like Liberia, where culturally certain things. Okay, let's say a 5 years old child got raped consistently, and this child has not known anything better, and this child grew up to the age of 19 years. And let's say that this child was being raped by their uncle. So all they know, they see this thing to be something normal. How do you break that cycle?
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Benjamin. Thanks. Okay. Well, Mimu.
You want to
What?
go first?
No, go ahead. We listen to you.
Mm. I didn't get the call-in name, but thank you for calling in and asking. So, parallel to mental health issues in terms of child sexual abuse is a developmental trauma, which means developmentally, the trauma occur in the developmental years. That's why we say childhood sexual abuse. That being said, on the issue of brain development, developmental trauma damages the brain development, okay? Because child sexual abuse is a pervasive abuse. It strips away the identity of the child who once could trust in a relationship. And in the case of the young girl who was abused throughout her childhood by an uncle, imagine feeling that that was a safe place once in her life and no longer can trust a relationship to feel safe, even though it may seem like a thing that is normal, but it's not normal. Um, Over the years of abuse, first of all, why don't we tell as children when we're abused? Because the perpetrator of the abuse, of the abuser, will make the child feel first that they are to be blamed if they share the abuse. So not only is your developmental stages now have been interrupted, and your brain now is can possibly process what has just happened to you. You can't tell anybody. You have no voice or choice in the matter of what just happened to you. So you are isolated. The goal is to isolate you. So you're carrying this burden of shame, blame, and you're no longer powerful, right? So you're powerless in the sense that there's nothing that can be done about it. That being said, the child has other consequences of the abuse. That is, they can suffer from depression without knowing what they're going through. They're isolated in their pain. They may have other disorders in eating or sleeping, relationships. Okay, now because this was a relational trauma, now our relationships, whether it's family members, whether you don't trust them, whether it is intimate relationships, we struggle within in those contexts of relationships as well, and many multiple, whether it's drugs or sex or some form of addiction or other, it's countless in terms of we have post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, we have low or poor self-esteem issues. Learning, it's also impacted negatively. The decision to, when we talk about doubt or shame or autonomy to make decisions in life, we struggle with that. This is dissociation is a big deal. So learning difficulties, such as also decision making, right? It's impacted. You are a slave, or more like bondage within yourself. Okay. We don't operate or we don't function like a normal person if no one has intervened or come into our rescue to save us. So those are all mental health issues we're dealing, because we're not operating as a normal person walking around. We are impacted with so much. We can't make decisions for ourselves. We are hiding behind the shame and guilt. And that's a big mental health problem right there. If we can't hold a job or go to school or know what we want to do, our brain is damaged. And so development is delayed on many different levels. And that being said, is it culturally normal that that person feel that this abuse has happened over the years, but that individual is suffering from a whole lot of other things, right? How do you operate as a person? How do you operate within a culture? The caller just highlighted the big societal issue we have in Liberia, such as this is normal. It's been happening before. It's happened before. It's happening again. And this is what we do. How do we now undo what is wrong and what has seemed to be normal? Is the awareness, and also talking to survivors by listening and supporting and believing their stories. We can't shun them away. We can't say, oh, well, don't talk to me about what happened because you're lying. As soon as we start doing that, we shut away again. We're not going to talk because we're going to be blamed anyway. It's normal. Or what did you do to get abused? Sometimes, oh yeah, they want no man business, but who introduced that child into that environment? How are we empowering others to have a voice to say, this happened to me? And then we, as society, saying that was wrong. It should never have happened. We have to take responsibility as a society, each and every one of us. We see something, we say something. We know something, we do something. It's not okay. It is not normal, because lives are being destroyed. Trauma, not everybody gets through it. We look around us in the world today. There's a whole host of different types of mental health issues as a result of trauma. Addiction, there has to be the trauma and all different forms of trauma prior to the addiction. So for that young woman who I can relate to, like myself, is to first and foremost believe her story and have empathy and support her, that what happened to her was never her fault and it was wrong.
Well, thank you, Mimo. I think you mentioned most of the important things. I mean, or segment I would have loved to touch on. But one thing I just want to say is also, you know, from a mental health standpoint, it comes with stigma. So people are
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to talk about it. Who wants to be called as the girl who was raped or the woman who was raped in the area or touched in the area? So
Mm-hmm.
I think confidentiality, privacy, teaching people, treating people with respect and professionalism is critically important. I also think holding the perpetrator accountable
Mm-hmm.
makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference
That's it.
because you reassure the victim. It creates some sense of trust. It eradicates doubt. To some extent. It also gives them that autonomy. It brings back that autonomy. You would think that autonomy is just restricted to 3 years old, but when we invite Mimu back on here, when we get to the adult part of this conversation, wherein you will get to understand why relationships might have some difficulties. It doesn't mean that the woman is bad, or it doesn't mean that the man is bad. But sometimes people are not properly healed from the past. And so once you trigger them, they start to jitter, they start to trip. Once you start doing things that seem, even if you didn't do it intentionally, once you start to do things that then they get back into that mood, and then you say, oh, yeah, they get problem, they put in it. But all of these things must be taken into consideration. And for people to function normally, like Munu said, for you to act your age, and God forbid, I know, God forbid, I will never see Mimu come on Facebook and insult anybody or get into drama. That is not going to happen. For you to function your age, for you to stop seeking relevance in the wrong way and attention in the wrong way, all of these things are factual things that there are some signs of traumatic experience that were not addressed. People ignore it. So at the end of the days, the victims gather together, and the way they see how to operate is to act as though they're bullies, to create the sense of seeking attention in a very negative form, very, very negative form. And sometimes people see it as entertainment, but it's detrimental. It is detrimental. It's problematic. So yes, we do have those challenges. And thanks to our caller. Um, I'm not sure we got about 8 more minutes here. Any other question or so forth from anyone? I know it's been a good time. Next week we'll continue from where we stopped, um, and we'll go through this. This will not be Mimu's first time. Mimu will be back on here to maybe help us understand and share maybe how women and we'll talk about it, how women deal with the trauma versus men, the traumatic experiences, because sometimes it's different from for genders. It is different for genders. And we'll get to see some of the different things that happen, and some of the choices that people make too in this process. It's very important for us to get into all of this. Again, this might be triggering for some, but that was not the intent. um, we want you to please, we'll pin here again, Mimo's go to Mimo's page. Mimo is in a Maryland area. So if you're in the tri-state NVD area, or however you call it, or
DMV.
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 Look at me. Today's us. I can
DC, Maryland, Virginia. The DMV.
Okay, DMV area. You're
Yeah.
watching us, or you will watch us later. Reach out to Mimo. This book is very interesting. It's very, very easy to follow, easy to read. Um, Very, very good stuff. Very good materials. You could use it in church. You know, you could use it in church. You
Yeah.
know, or in other religious area, whether at the mosque or other place. Good thing about it is not. And that's something I pick up from the book. It was not religiously focused to say it took one religion over the other. So that balance is created. And it's very good, to be very honest. It's very good. You can teach it, use it to teach in Sunday school, to inform children, to teach in schools, at home, make it part of your bedtime stories for your children. They can go through a page at a time. And if your children are of age to read and understand, they can read it, give you an interpretation of what they understand and how to see it, and keep it, keep it moving on and so forth. But this is a good book. That is my point, and I hope we'll gravitate towards it. Yes, Mimo.
And I'm glad you brought that because I think that was part of your question. I didn't answer that. How to read the book. The book is divided into 5 parts. So the
Yes.
first part is You Can Tell Me. That's from a parent's message to a child. The second one is I Am Special. Now the child is learning about self-worth. My Private Body Parts. I Have Boundaries and No Secrets. And I encourage parents to not have to read the whole book at once, but read it part by part, because after each part, there's an interactive lesson there for both parents and child to engage in. And read it one day, make it part of the next, few days in discussions, incorporating in the language at home and establishing those lessons, and read another part again and do it slowly, because these things can happen in one, shot. We want to teach over time for retention, and so that it becomes part of the lives of, how we teach children to protect themselves, and we as adults too in return protect them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you do, Mimo. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope I started the forgiveness process here today.
Okay, oh, I forgive you.
We will. What's up? Whatever. Well, anything? What's your parting comment for us, Mimo? Before we
I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share something that is very personal to me and should be personal to each and every one of us. For those of you who are watching the show now, it automatically tells me it's personal to you. I thank you for your support. For those of you who will be watching later on, I thank you too, because it's not just my story, it's all of our stories. You know why? Because somebody somewhere, either if it wasn't you who was violated, someone out there may have been violated, someone you love dearly. And just imagine if it was your own child. Can you imagine not ever wanting that to ever happen to them? So it's all very personal to all of us. And the purpose of this message today, the book, is that the abuse stopped with us and no other child should go through that. And just do your part, be responsible adults to protect all children. Thank you for having me on.
to protect all children. It is very important that we protect all children, even if they are not your children. It's critically important that we protect
Yes. The
all
Lord
children.
show I wish somebody was there to protect me. So
Very soon we'll have Mimo back on here to talk about maybe some of her experiences as to what and how. I heard you say a new book you're writing in. You see how long I've been out of touch with you?
I said, I'm feeling forgiving you. Please don't bring old story.
Okay, we'll get back in touch so I can catch up with everything and see what's going on. But congratulations to you on the move to Liberia with the book. I know most of the times people in the government, other places follow us on SKTV. I will hope that they will embrace this book. It will help.
We will update you guys on what's happening. We'll do that. Mhm.
So definitely, we're keeping prayers in touch, and we'll speak soon. You and I will connect again,
All right.
and I promise this time around to be behaved. I will not run away again.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Thank you
you
so
so
much,
much for
Mimi.
having me on. I appreciate
Happy
it.
weekend to you, and maybe
And for your audience, buy the book. I know I didn't say, but go buy the book, support the work, read it to your children, gift it to other children, other parents. Do it. I appreciate that.
yes, buy the book. Thank you, Mimo.
Okay.
Well, that was Mimo. I'm glad we made up our buddy. That my buddy there. I run my buddy for a long time. I ain't called her for a very, very long time. We didn't speak for a very long time, but she's done some amazing job, and I'm excited for her. I'm happy for her, and I wish her all the best. I'm in her camp, supporting her. She's always been so passionate about, you know, bringing forth either her story or helping other people or so forth. I am solely in support of the work of Mimo. I'm a fan of Mimo. She's my girl. She's my buddy. We cool. I will be calling her so that we can talk. She will be back. She'll be back. That's for sure. Now that she's forgiving me, she know I'll be giving her a hard time so that she can come, so we can talk a little more about some of these things. And don't be surprised that we'll be inviting other people on as well, at their own will, to share some of their experiences and so forth, so that we can have these kind of conversations while we're doing the education, so that it doesn't just look like somebody just pushing something down your throat, and it looks more skewed and so forth. But we encourage you to please buy the book. I have bought mine. I have the book. It's very good, very easy to follow, very very easy. To be honest, you wouldn't regret. It's worth the money. Um, it's worth everything. Yes, that's a good suggestion, Marula, Marula Moore. That's a good suggestion on making a video of the book. That would definitely be passed on to her. That suggestion will be passed on to her. Thank you. Um, thank you so much. But let's talk about what's expected next week. We climax on this part. We finish this part. We didn't finish this part. We didn't even get into how the brain function and how it can impact your life for the rest. It can impact your life for the rest of your stay on Earth as a human being. What are some of the things that happen in this stage of growth? Next week we'll continue. We'll talk about it. We'll make sure that we dive into it so that you can understand. You can understand how these children think, you know, and what's in the word and why they're thinking the way they're thinking. And you can also somehow try to pick up on your children as to, if you pay keen attention, what will be some of the strength, some of the areas of focus in education that you can build up on. Some of them will be naturally attracted in this age. You see that children are naturally attracted to, some of them are naturally attracted to computers. You will start to pick up these different traits, but it doesn't mean down the line might not change when they start to associate or so forth. But at least you will get some kind of base. You also understand, if you're right, left brain or so forth. We'll continue this conversation next Friday. We want to say thank you so much for the time. Thanks to Mimo for coming on and sharing her experience with us, her book she talked about. I look forward to getting a sneak peek of the new book she's writing. I know she'll give me the G's in the back. That for sure. She'll give me the G's. If she doesn't give me the G's, I'm going again for another 5 years. And you don't tell her. You don't tell her I will not call for another 5 years again. Nobody should tell her. Yeah, so that's my plan B. If she doesn't give me the G's and let me know what's up, and however way we can support Mimo's work, we will. These are good things, good initiatives, and we look forward to another segment next Friday. Please share the show with someone. Tell someone about the conversation today. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any question, any concern while we're going. Last week, sometime this week, I know when I posted on my page, and we'll get to it talking about how 95% of the child's, growth is within the first 5 years. We had a lot of people that came on, and some people brought education to the table. Some people wanted to argue. Some people wanted to make it look like it's a debate or so forth. Everything is acceptable. It is acceptable. We accept everything. Like I said, if you need the resources that we use to be able to come up with some of this data or some of this information, we'll make them available to you free of charge. You can scrutinize us. You can correct us. We don't intend to project that we know everything. This is a learning curve. This is a learning process. But I think it's critically important that we work together on, saying what is important for all of us. So next week, again, we'll talk about the size of the brains and how they're formed, and how when people growing, our age at age 3, what really happened, and how the brain continues to, even though it's growing. Now, let me say this: even though something can be grown, but it does not mean that it's mature. We need to get that clear. Maturity is different from growth. So that means your child can be taller than you, in another sense. Your child can be taller than you or got a bigger body than you. It does not mean that child is mature. The child still lives with you, still provide for them, and so forth. There are a lot of things that maybe that child needs to learn, but the child grow. So yes, the brain does grow at that stage. It's in growth. It's fully grown, nearly fully grown or fully grown by age 50. 90% of your brain. If it's 90% of your brain, the other 10% by you on your own. all the other wahala then that you'll be getting now, the heartbreak, the drama, maybe like other 10% we can put there. But yes, in a nutshell, I want to say thank you. Let's have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay out of trouble. And we will call it on night or day to some of you. Uh, good night. Good night to you. Stay safe. Stay out of trouble. We will no copyright to the songs that are playing. We will close up with one of my I love Liberia and I love Liberia, one of my favorite Liberians. Quickly for the announcement tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be on SKTV. Same place. Tomorrow at 11 Arizona time, 6 p.m. GMT, which is Africa or Liberia time. 1 p.m. Eastern time, and 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. That means if you're in the Midwest, 12 p.m. is your time. We'll be on here. We will be talking politics. So no politics today, but tomorrow we'll talk politics. You can rest assured. A lot of information, a lot of things we'll talk about, whether they're opposition or the government or so forth. We'll talk about it tomorrow to keep us moving as part of the conversation and the education on what do we need to do to help our country. Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your time. And let's be blessed. Have a good night.
Adio,